How do I come up with poses for characters in my artwork? Well, keep watching to find out. Hi, how's everybody doing today? So this is a question I get fairly consistently from other artists. Let's start with what could arguably be the most important part, using references. Or should I say, learning how to use references. Contrary to what some people believe, successfully using references in your artwork is not simply tracing a pose. You need to consider things like the feeling you're trying to convey, motion, action, exaggeration, and so on. I'll be demonstrating this throughout the video, but for now let me show you how I would use references to plan out and pose a character in my artwork. Full disclosure, this has been sped up a bit for the sake of time. The reference photo I'm using here is from a free stock photo site. I like the action here with her stepping forward. I also like the placement of her hand on her waist, but that didn't end up fitting with the particular quick idea I was going with. It could also be helpful that you can see a lot of the musculature here. Depending on the character, you may have more exposed leg or midriff, and this reference shows you how the muscles handle the weight distribution and the posture in the pose. This first part is demonstrating how I would normally use a reference when sketching out an idea. I don't try to get anything exact at this point. This will all get adjusted as it progresses. The idea here was something like Lara Croft walking into a tomb with a torch, so I exaggerated that lean forward a bit and changed the head and arm positions entirely. If you're struggling with the parts you're changing, more references could help in that sort of situation. Don't be afraid to use more than one reference for your ideas. For example, if I were to take this idea further, I might find some references for the arms and the hands. However, when mixing references like this, it's very important to understand how to tweak the pose so an arm or leg doesn't look dislocated or awkward. Keep in mind that it's a very loose sketch at this stage, and everything is subject to change. Don't be afraid to experiment and play with the pose. Or, if you're having a lot of difficulty, sometimes it's easier to start fresh than it is to fix something that isn't working. I'm sure every artist has been there before. Let's get this sketch finished up and then I'll talk about why I don't like tracing. Now that you have a rough idea of my rough idea, let me give you an idea, roughly, of why sketching from a reference photo or image in this manner leads to different, and in my opinion, superior results compared to tracing an image directly. I'm going to go ahead and loosely trace over this stock photo for a side-by-side comparison. Not only are there moral implications to tracing over an image, but I find that the result in the end is a lot more stiff and less fun, if that makes any sense. But this also depends on how realistic of a style you're going for. If you're creating a portrait, you're probably not going to have an exaggerated pose. Obviously, with my initial sketch, the proportions and exaggerated features change the overall structure of the body to be a tad less realistic, but they also provide a more appealing base for the composition, as well as adding more flavor to an overall static image. Also, thighs and hips, am I right? Click that thumbs up button down below if you agree with me, or the thumbs down button if you think I'm trash. As you can see, the trace figure is creating a straight, stiff line with their posture, whereas the one on the right has more of a flow to it, even if it isn't completely realistic. These sorts of curved, flowing shapes tend to be more visually appealing. For the rest of this video, I'm going to play some footage of myself working on an idea for Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil Village. I think this will provide a pretty good example of how sometimes your first idea just isn't working the way you intended, and that it's okay to start over. This is also a good demonstration of how there is a lot of hard work and dedication that people don't see with your final artwork. Sometimes hours worth of work ends up getting scrapped. And other times you finish something just to look back on it the next day and see tons of mistakes. It's the ability to recognize these mistakes that mean you are learning and growing as an artist. There will always be challenges to overcome, and the very first step to solving any problem is to perceive the cause. So don't get too disheartened when things just aren't turning out right. I'm going to let this play out for a bit, but before I do, I'd like to ask you to comment below on what sort of content you would like to see me make for video in the future. Is there any particular area where you're struggling and you want to hear how I would go on about it? Is there any particular area where you think I'm excelling and you're just curious on how I do it? Or do you just want me to draw some shit and ramble on about how my hognose snake is digging through his substrate and making a bunch of noise while I'm recording? Yes, you will get fed today! Regardless of the reason, I would vastly appreciate any comments, feedback, or questions in the comment section. Now let's watch me do some drawing and I will return at the end of the video. Thank you for watching the video. Before I go, I want to say thank you to all of my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. I really appreciate the support in helping me strive towards my dream of becoming a full-time artist. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, you can find the link in the description box or through my social media. You can also see the URL scroll by at the top of my patron list. Patrons get to see exclusive artwork, mostly extra spicy, and tutorials that are in the works, voting rights on what I do next, access on some Photoshop files and brushes, and their names are listed at the end of my videos. Once again, thank you all for watching. I hope some of you find this sort of thing helpful, or at very least interesting. Please comment below if you did or didn't, or if there's something else you'd like me to cover. If you can't think of anything for a comment, then feel free to tell me who is your favorite character. And always, keep drawing.